Hey Trippers, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey Trippers, my guest today is Ruta Stasiunite. Ruta, I hope I pronounced your last name right. I don't think I've tested in front of you yet, so I'm not really sure if I got that right. Ruta is a coach and consultant, as well as the founder of Redefining Success, where she helps individuals and organizations break free from the traditional ideas of success to create a more meaningful and impactful life. Um, Ruta was my mindset coach as early as 2022, and we've kept in touch since. She's had a tremendous impact on me. She has a tremendous wealth of experience in coaching, leadership development, and organizational transformation. Ruta is passionate about guiding people through personal and professional change with authenticity and purpose. In this episode, we explored her unique journey, as well as the importance of redefining success on your own terms, as well as how to lead a life that aligns with your values. So get comfortable and get ready for some powerful insights from Ruta. But welcome to Tripping Through Transformation. I'm your host, Guillaume Poirier, and I'm inviting you on a journey that will expand your outlook on life.
Balance makes it bang.
Join me as we delve into the realms of mental health, resilience, personal growth, community, and alternative healing. Through personal narratives and expert insights, we'll explore the transformative power of shared stories. Get ready to escape from narrow perceptions and dive into a world of diverse perspectives. Ruta, welcome to Tripping Through Transformation.
Thank you so much. What a cool intro.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a work in progress. I've put a lot of things together to make that one clip. So I'm happy with how it came out.
Well done.
Yeah, we were just talking before the show and I was struggling to find my words. So hopefully they come to me now. But I'm really happy to have you on. It's been a while since you and I have talked. I think you and I connected in 2022 and we did some work together. So I'm happy to have you on and share your background, your expertise, and hopefully get some good insights for the listeners.
I'm happy to be here, and time flies. It's 2025. It's been 3 years since we worked together. It's crazy.
Just over 2. Yeah, probably the end of 2022.
Wow.
But yeah, time does fly. I mean, you've been to a lot of places in that time, because I remember when we first connected, you were in Portugal, which is where you're currently. And then you spent a year in Brazil, and then you did some traveling, and now you're back in Portugal. So how was that? How was your travels?
That was amazing. In the beginning, when we used to work together, I was in the south of Portugal, in the middle of nowhere, in a tiny, tiny village, maybe 100 people max in that tiny village. But for me, it was like, I need to be in nature. And then I received this out of the blue invitation to go and live not actually live. I just got an invitation to go to the Brazilian jungle, and I didn't really have a clue why I'm going there. What's the idea behind? I honestly thought that I was going to be back in Portugal very soon. But then that soon turned into 14 months in the Brazilian jungle.
Yeah.
So I lived there, and it was such an incredible experience. Honestly, it gave me so much abundant senses. Like it felt like from living in a very scarce environment where there's a lot of lack of water, lack of resources. It's very dry. It's very in summertime it's just not really pleasant. There's a lot of danger for wildfires and stuff like that. And then suddenly I landed in the Brazilian jungle, and it's full of water, and there's abundance, and there's, bananas hanging everywhere, and mangoes, and like everything is just there, and you can just live in the jungle. Like, you will never feel like you're homeless. If you don't have a home, go live in the jungle.
Yeah.
It was such an amazing experience. But then I missed some standards, and I missed Europe, and I missed being a little bit closer to my family, who is based in Lithuania mainly. So that's why I came back, and now I'm closer to Lisbon.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been in the Brazilian jungle, but I've definitely moved from, a town of maybe 80 to 100,000 people to a town of 5,000 people. And just the difference now, you have to learn to be a lot more self-reliant, and, you don't have all the services and commodities that you're accustomed to in a bigger town. So yeah, there's challenges, but I think there's growth to be had there as well, because you learn to do things differently. You learn to be self-reliant. So there's perks there. But so what did you end up doing in Brazil for 14 months? Were you doing some learning? Were you doing some teaching? What were you doing?
Honestly, it when I look back, it was probably more than anything a spiritual journey, a homecoming experience, because I feel like although I have been doing a lot of healing work, let's say, and personal development, it was very much in my head a lot of the time.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was very much mental health type of
yeah.
work. And when I went there, I spent all of the time with my spiritual teacher, who is one of my closest people in my life now.
Mm,
And he was helping me to find connection with my soul, find connection with the nature on a whole new level. So that's what I did, honestly. Of course, I was working with my clients, I was doing my whole coaching thing and everything. But more than anything, it was a homecoming journey when I was connecting with myself, with my purpose, with who I really am and what I'm here to do on this planet. And it's been a crazy journey.
yeah. I don't recall his name. Is it Theo that you went to
Yes,
see?
it's Theo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard to him too, also through Tama, who's going to be a guest in a couple of weeks. So he seems like he's having a big impact on a lot of people, because Tama tells me great things about Theo as well.
Yes, yes. He is a wonderful spiritual teacher and guide, and has a lot to say about psychedelics as well, because he used to work in a retreat center, ayahuasca retreat center, for
Okay.
nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I did in the jungle. I experienced ayahuasca several times, and that was one of the contributing factors to connecting with my soul and basically experiencing other realms, other dimensions, and that was a mind-blowing experience in itself.
Well, if you brought it up, did you want to dive a little more into that, or did you want to move on? Because
Sure, we
ayahuasca,
can.
that'd be
Sure, we can.
okay. Yeah, I've never done ayahuasca, so I've experienced psilocybin mushrooms, and I've done DMT as well as LSD. So, but ayahuasca is a whole other thing.
Yeah,
I have no clue what to expect. So maybe you could tell me what your experience was like.
yeah. Well, so I also didn't have much experience with psychedelics before ayahuasca. I had LSD, or actually, I was microdosing LSD a couple of times. And because I was very sober, I didn't, abuse any of the psychedelics or any other drugs or substances at all.
Yeah.
Even microdosing was doing a lot of stuff to me. So when I experienced ayahuasca, well, first of all, it just felt like something that I couldn't even put it into words. And I think that's exactly what most people say
Yeah.
about ayahuasca, is that you literally leave your body and you experience something that is undescribable.
Mm.
It's just, you can't put it into words. But what I can say now, after, I think I had in total 16 trips,
Oh,
in maybe like
yeah.
4 times each, so like 4 retreat experiences. And it was like, I'm not sure exactly how it was. I think it was like 4 times each. And so 4 days in a row, we would be having a ceremony of ayahuasca, right? And after those 16 times, I experienced so many different things. Like every trip was so different. But I would say the underlying thread was what a bliss it is to be alive,
Mm.
no matter where you come from, no matter what your circumstances have been, are, or even will be, but you always have connections to something so pure and so beautiful, so blissful. There's so much love and care, and basically that nature, ayahuasca, earth, Mother Earth is always taking care of you. And that was just sometimes, like in some of the trips, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what I'm experiencing. And again, I can't even explain it in words because it's
Yeah.
undescribable. So it's been really, really powerful.
All positive.
All positive, yes, but I did also have some trips which were intense. Let's
Yeah.
put it this way.
Yeah.
So one of them in particular was very, very intense. And yet, even though it was that intense, when I came out of it, I
Yeah.
realized how powerful I am. Because if I can experience and handle that, because it
Hmm.
was so much, it was. Have you seen the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once?
No, but
That's
I'll write
a
it down.
brilliant movie. And that literally was how I felt, as
Okay.
if I'm experiencing everything, everywhere, all at once. And it was so overwhelming and it was so tough. And I thought, oh my God, what if I never come out of this? But
Yeah.
somehow, deep down, I knew that I will. And when I came out of it, I was like, I can handle anything. If I
Yeah.
can handle that, I'm capable of anything. And I think this is also another thing that for a lot of people, when they experience psychedelics and when they experience not even psychedelics, but some hardship in life, you can handle anything. You just don't know that yet.
Yeah. I mean, psychedelics definitely made me see that way as well. Again, I've never done ayahuasca, but in some of my more intense psilocybin experience, I talk about this a few times where after I'd lost my home to wildfires, I was also battling for custody of my children at the same time, and I just felt overwhelmed, too many things going on, like anxious, probably depressed, and I did a trip with my partner, a psilocybin, and maybe 2-3 hours into the trip, I start to hyperventilate. I'm crying, and she looks at me and she says, "What's going on with you? Like, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I feel like I have like black smoke, dark energy leaving my body. I know it probably looks scary, but it feels euphoric. It literally felt like bad juju, like bad energy just leaving. And it felt great. It just felt like tension leaving my body."
Wow.
So, people talk about good trips, bad trip. I've had trips where you called bad, where you feel anxious and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But I think that with some experience, you can kind of guide through that and you learn that there's a lesson to be had. There's no such thing as a bad trip.
Mm,
Maybe it's like a forced experience, a forced lesson is how I see it. I've always gotten something positive out of any trip that I've had. So
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think Tio would be an excellent guest on this podcast, honestly, because he is an expert in ayahuasca and he would also educate on this topic about bad trips, good trips, and all that stuff. And speaking of that, what he would definitely say is that you just need to be in the right environment with the right people who will hold space for you so
yeah,
that you don't have to deal with all of this on your own. And it's
yeah,
something very sacred. It's not something to abuse, it's not something to overuse. It's something so pure and so beautiful. When you do it right, in the right environment, in the right energy, then it's gonna help. And like you said, it's there's no bad trip as long as you surrender, as long as you know that no matter what happens, you will always come out on the other side. And again, there's always someone to hold space for you, and that's very, very important.
yeah. Yeah, I just want to touch on two quick things that come up while you were talking. You mentioned that when you were microdosing LSD, you were very sober, not doing anything else. Same for me. Like most of my life, I've been super anti-drug. Like I didn't start doing mushrooms until my early 30s, and that was the first drug I'd ever done. And yeah, so I didn't have any previous experience doing any other drugs. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what feeling I was gonna get. But it was how can I put this? I'm at a loss for word. I'm gonna have to come back to it, to where I'm going with this. But again, I was very sober, didn't know what to expect. Um, no, I lost my train of thought, Ruta. I had another point I was going to talk about. with the psychedelics. We'll have to touch
That's
back
okay.
on it.
Yeah, maybe it will come back in a
Maybe
moment.
it will come back. Okay. But yeah, so one of the things I want to talk to you about, because you've had, I feel like, an interesting journey. You say you come from Lithuania, right around the time that the USSR kind of came apart. I had Alex Chris come on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he a little older than you, and he was in Ukraine, and he got to experience what it was like living under that regime, that and all the propaganda and stuff like that. Did you get to experience that, or were you kind of just like right around the time where that stopped happening?
It kind of stopped happening, but I did grow up with the aftermath of.
Because your parents would have been around that too, so they would have
Right.
had that mentality, and you would have been around
Exactly,
that. Yeah.
exactly. So I had a lot of influence from my parents, from my grandparents, from the society in general, because it takes a while for the society to start changing. So basically, I was born literally 1 month after Berlin Wall broke down, which means that then only a couple of months later, Lithuania became independent finally. So I was a baby. And so I was growing up with this aftermath of Soviet Union breaking down and Lithuania suddenly becoming independent. And at the time there was a lot of scarcity in general, and there was a lot of like, oh my god, suddenly these walls are open and Lithuanians can go and travel and stuff like that. And most people couldn't afford it, so there were some people who were kind of abusing the system a little bit and making money out of it, but most of the people didn't really have the means.
Yeah.
And I was from that side of the society where my family did their best and they were having jobs and all that stuff, but those jobs were not very well paid. And so my first experience as a child that I remember around this topic was that it was a hot summer day and my dad said that we didn't have money, we couldn't
Yeah.
afford ice cream. And I was like, okay, well then it kind of planted a seed in my subconscious that it's hard to make money, we don't have money, we're poor, we have to suffer and stuff like that. And also growing up, I was wearing my older brother's clothes, some of them. Like, for example, I remember this huge puff yellow winter jacket that was way too big for me, and I had to wear it because we couldn't afford anything else. And so it was my brother's jacket that for him it was too small and for me it was too big at the
Yeah.
time, and I had to wear it. So yeah, that was affecting definitely the way I felt about money, the way I felt about abundance, the way I felt about what's possible in life, what's possible to create. My reality, like understanding and perceiving reality, was very skewed.
Yeah. Yeah, this topic, like I read in your bio, I was on your website and I read your bio, and it talks about the ice cream story, and that's part of the reason I wanted to bring it up, because I grew up in similar circumstances where I was with a single mom who was struggling to make ends meet, but I had like a weird alternative universe I was living in, because I was also going to private school. So it's like Monday to Friday, I'm being, I go to the cafeteria, I get all the food that I want, and I have a very structured life, and da da da. And on the weekends, I go and live with my mom, and we're living in low income housing, and she's struggling to make ends meet. And there's a joke that Dave Chappelle says, and I'm not going to tell the joke, but the point of the story is he goes and he asks his dad for $1 to go to the dance, and his dad tells him, like, I don't have $1 for you to go to the dance. And he goes, you don't have $1? Like, how are you maintaining a house? How are you paying for shit if you don't have $1? Like, $1 seems like not a lot, but for some people it is a lot. And I remember being like 8 years old, my mom asking me if I had like $2 to buy a loaf of bread, because I would sometimes go and work for my aunt and she would give me a couple bucks here and there, right? So yeah, and the scarcity mindset is definitely something that I also grew up with, because my grandparents didn't really believe in education. They believed in hard work, hard work, hard work. And, work can only get you so far. Eventually, you got to start using your brain if you want to kind of grow. And so, yeah. So, again, I felt like there was a parallel between your story and mine. And one last thing I want to bring up is, have you ever heard of the story about the fleas that are put in the jar?
No.
So I guess fleas naturally, I don't know, they can jump really high. I don't remember, like 16 inches or some, I don't remember. But if you put fleas in the jar and put a lid on, right, they'll jump until they hit their heads on the lid. And eventually they'll say, I'm tired of hitting my head. So they'll adjust how high they can jump until they just jump just high enough so they don't hit the lid. Okay. When those fleas have offsprings, they learn to only jump as high as the lid. And even once you take the lid off, they won't jump any higher. They never learn that it can jump 16 inches or whatever it is. And
Mm.
so, you're talking about the scarcity mindset. You grew up with that. So you probably believe that, this is my lifestyle. I'm going to, be poor my whole life. How did you kind of transition? How did you change that mindset? How did you say, no, there's more to this. I can grow out of this.
Yeah, that's what an excellent analogy, by the way. This is really awesome. I love it. Well, it wasn't something that just suddenly clicked. It
No.
was a long journey, and it started with just feeling like I'm not living my life somehow. It felt like there's something more out there, and it started literally by going abroad for the first time. And I mean, Portugal is my seventh country to live in so far.
Yeah.
And I went to Vienna, to Austria for the first time, and then it started opening my mind like, oh, okay, this is how people abroad live like. And I
Mm.
was exposed to different cultures. In an exchange semester, there were people from all over the world, from Canada, from the US, from Argentina, from Chile, and other European countries like France and Germany and so on. And suddenly I was exposed to all of these different perspectives and different cultures, and that really helped me to kind of fall in love with expanding my horizon and expanding my mind. And so bit by bit by bit, it started kind of sucking me into, I just want to learn more. I want to understand what I don't know yet. I want to, I'm curious. And so it was kind of feeding my curiosity, and I was following my intuition a lot of the time to just dive into new things. And it didn't start, honestly, it didn't properly start until I was like 28 or something like that. And i
Okay.
I felt like I was living a lie, working in the corporate career which I didn't love. And I was like, is this really how we're supposed to live
Mm.
life? I mean, come on, like it cannot be just that. And it was such a, I almost feel like I was one of those fleas in the jar,
Yeah.
where I felt like I was being contained within a jar. And I thought, wait a second, what if I take the lid off, and what if there's a whole other world outside?
Right.
Because the jar, if you compare it to Earth,
Mm-hmm.
to the world, or to the galaxies, like it's just one tiny thing. And that's exactly how I felt. I was like, I feel like there's way more to life. I feel like there's way more possibilities, way different realities. And then I was just exposing myself to different teachings, different workshops, in face to face or online. It didn't really matter to me, but I dove deep into understanding my mind.
Mm.
And I was reading some books, watching YouTube videos, and I was like, wow, okay, now I understand why some people just stay in the jar and they just live in the scarcity. And then there's a whole other world of people who are just flying, and they're not just fleas, they're literally flying, like
Yeah.
rocket ship type of flying to Mars, like Elon Musk type of
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And I see Elon Musk is there on your wall also. So
Yeah. I've been a fan of him for years. You know, what drew me to Elon is that he had a mission to go to Mars, and I wanted to buy stocks in SpaceX. And when I found out I couldn't, and that the reason was that he didn't want to jeopardize the mission by bringing in investors who might decide that, no, instead of going to Mars, we're going to go mine asteroids. He said, no, I'm not about the money. I want to go to Mars. So that's what got me to liking Elon. It's just, he's got a vision and he sticks to the plan. He gets things done.
yeah.
But just kind of going back to that scarcity mindset and you growing up in that environment. So it sounds to me, if I understood you right, that you kind of went to the world, explored, and then over time you kind of gradually got to experience things and you said, hey, there's more to this. Am I kind of understanding that right?
Yeah, it kind of just opened, like it was, you know how it felt like I'm peeking through the door
Yeah.
and seeing like, oh my god, there is more to it. And then I, for that one short semester, exchange semester, I went to Vienna, and then I came back to Lithuania to finish my studies, my bachelor degree. And I was like, oh my god, I want to go abroad to a bigger city, to a bigger country. So I moved to Berlin in Germany, and I then pursued my master's degree with the intention again to expand myself.
Yeah.
So yes, in a sense, for me, what was really important, and I think for the listeners, the idea behind is to expose yourself to something different than your current setting, current environment. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a physical environment. It can also be just, listening to podcasts like this one, or signing up to workshops, or something that you're not normally doing, but it feels like, oh my god, this is really cool. And I think in the very beginning, what I started doing when I was in Berlin, actually, I went to a lot of meetups. So on meetup.com or Eventbrite, for example, there were a lot of events that were free of charge, and I would just search for interesting events that were resonating with me, and they were, let's say, related to purpose or mindset or personal development and stuff like that. And I would be just going to these events and listening in and trying to understand, like, okay, what can I learn today?
Yeah.
So it was a journey. It was like just digging deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. I ask because, when I look at my life, I feel like my grandmother's gift is what I call it, because she's the reason I went to private school, right? When she passed, she left $2,000 behind with the intention that it'd be used towards my education. And that's how I got to go to private school. I feel like if that had never happened, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. It's because I got to experience like higher education and structure and all these things at an early age, that during those fundamental years, I feel like that it created that self-image in me as a child that, yeah, there's no limits, like anything is possible. And I was also very fortunate when I was in grade 4 that I attended school with the son of a celebrity. And she came at one time and she did a little concert for us, and she was just so approachable and down to earth. But I also knew that she was rich and famous and successful. And again, that kind of gave me that taste of, okay, like I could be that person. Like, even though on the weekends I live in low income housing, that's not my life. There's more to it. There's more possibilities out there. So for me, I feel like there was always that gift from my grandmother that she put in me. And so for people that are struggling, if you don't have the chance that, somebody kind of bestows that gift upon you, like you're saying, go out there, explore, experience new things. Eventually you'll figure something that clicks, that resonates, and you'll find your niche. You don't have to be stuck. Because you also talked about the corporate. I felt stuck in my job as a power engineer too, right? Maybe we can talk about that as well, like the transition for you from corporate to coaching. Like,
Yeah.
what didn't you like about corporate? What did you want to achieve with coaching? Like, what made you make that jump?
So before I answer this question, I just had this other great example of great influence in life. I was studying a little bit of the founder of Spanx, Sarah Blakely.
Okay.
And she, when she was 15 or 16, her father gave her a tape of Wayne Dyer. And at
Okay.
that age, when all of her friends were partying and getting drunk and listening to Britney Spears or whatever it was at the time, I guess it was not Britney Spears, it was probably a completely different generation. But basically, she was listening to Wayne Dyer in the car and studying mindset work. And
Right.
now she is a freaking self made billionaire. And that to me is such a perfect example of how important it is to expose yourself. And in her case, it was luckily her father, who was a lawyer, and he was like, okay, take this tape and listen to this. And she took this advice and did that. But that's the thing, like, just exposing yourself in whichever shape or form is really gonna change your life forever. Because that's what Sarah keeps on saying in all of her teachings, that if not mindset work, she wouldn't be where she is and who she is today. And that's why it's so potent and so important to work on yourself.
And Wayne
Now,
Dyer is one of the first. You introduced me to him when we started working together,
yeah,
and you showed me the movie, and I forget the name of the movie.
the
Yeah,
shift.
The Shift, yes, and he has the book as well. And yeah, I thought that was a great movie. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's a great movie to really feel into what resonates with you in life. And I think this is exactly how I want to switch into, answering your question about the corporate and coaching and all that stuff. And that's what was in the movie The Shift, that when it doesn't resonate with you anymore, you will feel it. So that's exactly what happened to me in the corporate, because I felt like I was trying to fit in,
mm,
and I was trying to do what everyone is doing in life, like
right,
succeed. And so, I graduated from the master's degree and got a job as a project manager. And I was like, yay, it's, project manager. How cool is that? And don't get me wrong, it was a very good job. And for a lot of people, it was something like, wow, this is really cool that you get to travel. At the time, in the beginning, I lived in Brussels in Belgium, and I could travel to London, and I could travel to Germany, and I could go to Paris and to Amsterdam, and places like that. And for a lot of people, it would be like, wow, this is so cool. You get to travel for work. And it was actually a really cool job in a sense, because I was arranging things and managing people and all that stuff, but it wasn't giving me a sense of fulfillment.
right.
And that was a huge missing piece. And that's what the movie, the Shift, shows, that
Yeah,
at some point, if it doesn't work, if it's not in alignment with your soul, it's just not meant to continue anymore. And so what happened in the corporate is that bit by bit I started losing interest in even being surrounded by people in the office. And that happened because I started realizing that everyone is just constantly talking about the same things. It felt like every day is a groundhog day. Everyone is just recreating the same thing over and over and over again. Every single conversation at lunch break is exactly the same as yesterday. Everyone is talking about weekend plans, next Netflix show, or some, politics in the office or something like that. And I was like, wait a second. Don't we have more things to talk about? Don't isn't there more to life than just to keep on recreating the same thing over and over again? So basically, again, I was, if before that, or in parallel, let's say, I was curious about the mind and curious about what's out there in the world. At the same time, simultaneously, I was experiencing this almost like aversion to, like, I don't want even to be here. I felt
yeah,
allergic to those conversations, and I started avoiding spending time with my colleagues. And bit by bit by bit, I started realizing this is just not for me at all. It's not at all how I see myself in the future. And this is the key also, to have a clear vision. Like, okay, so if I don't know what I or if I don't resonate with my current life, what do I want for my future? What is it that I envision for myself? Who do I want to become? And that is something that I then started finally realizing, wait a second, I've just been recreating the same reality over and over again. Just I let life happen to me
yeah,
instead of making deliberate decisions in alignment with my vision. I didn't even have a vision at the time. So then, how coaching came into place is that I started, again, through all of these events and working on myself and workshops and stuff like that. I started realizing, you know what? What I really love is deep conversations.
yeah,
You know what I really love is understanding the mind. You know what I really love is psychology and
mhm,
everything to do with something that's like, how do you create reality? And interestingly, I actually wanted to study psychology when I was back in high school. I just decided not to because it's a tough profession to have. And at the time, there was a lot of stigma around psychology. So that's how it transitioned. I was like, oh wow, I can do this for a living. And then honestly, at the time, I didn't even know coaching existed.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a conversation with, honestly, a completely random person when I went on a solo trip for the very first time back in 2016. And I had this conversation for on, I don't know, like a breakfast place or something. And this person is like, did you ever think about becoming a coach? And I said, what is that? Like
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. So that's how it started. It was, again, it was a bit like a step-by-step process, bit by bit.
Yeah. I want to share a little bit about my transition from, my career to what I'm doing now, because I see some parallels, but there's also like a big difference between you and I. So for me, like I was saying, as a child going to private school, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or like a very successful businessman. That's what I figured I would be. Now life happens, I didn't stay in private school forever, and then I don't know, it just didn't pan out the way that I thought it would. And so out of high school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I thought I might be an architect, didn't have the grades. Thought I might be like a computer programmer, didn't have the grades. So I was lost. And so my mother's boyfriend at the time, he worked in the oil and gas industry. And he said, well, power engineers make good money and it's not that hard of a job. At 18 years old, I'm thinking, cool, I'll be driving a Dodge Viper and I'll have a nice house. And that's all that, like, material things is all I was thinking about. I just saw numbers. So I went to school and I did that. Now, during my work term, I had a bad work term where I was bullied like really bad. And I decided, no, I'm not doing that. Fast forward like 2 years, now I'm going to be a dad. And I made a choice. For me, it was more important to provide for my family than pursue my own goals and happiness. So I went back to school, finished power engineering, and I got hired. And I did that for 15 years. But like you were saying, I didn't feel fulfillment. I didn't feel like I was doing anything productive. Like, securing Canada's energy future was not a slogan that was appealing to me. So I just did it literally to provide. But it also kind of became like an anchor. Like I work, guys call me the angry Frenchman, not because I was a jerk or because I was bad, just because I just didn't socialize. I kind of just kept to myself and minded my own thing. And like you said, Groundhog Day, just get up, go to work, come home, turn on Netflix or turn on a video game, go to bed, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And I did that for 15 years. And then when my house burnt down and then all these other things happened and I lost my job, it was to me, it was devastating because, while I wasn't happy what I was doing, I was still fulfilling my duty as a father. So I was okay with that. I felt content because at least I knew my family was secure. I could sacrifice personal satisfaction for my children. Once my house burnt down, it was like, and then I lost my job. It was like the universe saying, hey, man, you're not happy there. This is not what you're meant to be doing. There's greater things for you out there. Let's go, wake up and go after it. Right. And now that's how I end up here. Where I'm struggling now, maybe, you can maybe give me a little coaching advice on the show, is that while I'm pursuing things that make me happy, I feel like now I'm not fulfilling my duties as a father because now I'm struggling to provide. So there's like this fight that I'm having between providing and doing what makes me happy. So I don't
Yeah,
know,
I
anything
think,
for listeners
yeah,
there?
it's a tricky one because the thing is, it's a matter of balancing the two, in my opinion. And I think different people probably would say slightly different things. But
Yeah.
in my opinion, to feel secure and safe, it's better to have a provider job for the time being until your thing, your gig, your passion project, your passion business is expanding and growing and picking up the speed. And I've seen people who just, you know, jump right away. And I personally did that. I jumped right away. But here's the difference: I don't have kids. I don't have these kind of responsibilities on my shoulders. And I don't think that I would have done it this way if I had that kind of responsibility. So it's easy for me to say, like, oh, just quit your job. So I personally would say the the key is falling in love with the provider job, even if it's not necessarily fulfilling,
Mm.
but staying positive about it, with instead of feeling resentful, like, oh, I need to have this shitty job and I hate it, and I have to wake up in the morning and go there every day. It's like, no, actually, I get to have this job to provide for my family because it's what matters to me. These are my values. I care about my family, I care about my kids. This is my number one priority, or number two, number three, whatever it is, but it's important to me. And just kind of softening the feeling about the job while it is providing for you,
Yeah.
and again, simultaneously balancing it out with your passion projects and working on them whenever you can, which is exactly what you're doing right now. So if you're struggling to actually enjoy your job that provides for you, then that's where the work really is. Because here's the thing, why I'm saying this is because we live in the law of attraction, universal laws type of situation. And when you don't feel grateful for what you currently have, what you have created, what you have built, then the universe is going to provide more of that.
Right.
So if you feel resentful about your job, then you will recreate that. That same feeling is going to feed the same reality. But then if you feel grateful, it's like, oh my God, I get paid for this. This is amazing. I don't necessarily love this job, but gosh, it takes all the stress away. It makes me feel better about, our stability, about our family life, and just finding as much gratitude as you possibly can to actually feel it. And this is key. It's not like, oh, now I will have to write down 5 things that I'm grateful for every evening. It's really learning to truly appreciate what you do have,
Yeah.
and then you will attract more of the greatness. Then you become a vibrational match to more and better opportunities. Let's say your gig is picking up the speed, and more interesting people are reaching out to you, or somebody finds your podcast and is like, oh my God, I want to be on, and stuff like that. But it's because you're already grateful with what you currently have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that you definitely taught me is that your mindset is kind of like your life's filter, right? And if you look at things positively, you'll see positive things. And if you look at things negatively, you'll see negative things. And obviously, what you see is what you attract. And so if you go to work every day, you're going, oh, I hate my life, this freaking sucks, and this and that, then yeah, it will suck. But if you try to, and I've been there, we were talking about NGBN before we came on the show, and I had high hopes. And when it fell apart, and I was still doing my custodial maintenance job, I was, oh, what the heck? I have to stay here longer now. Like, I wasn't happy, but at the same time, I had a job and I could still provide for my family. And I'm fortunate that I can do this because my girls are, 18 and 19 now. They're older. They're not little babies anymore. So they don't depend on me as much. So I can have the flexibility to do the things that I want to do. But
I
yeah,
think the key in all of this is also to look at any situation and be like, okay, everything happens for a reason. So the fact that NGBN, collapsed, and then you had to continue in your job, it's like, well, even though maybe instantaneously it feels like, but then it's like, actually, everything always happens for a reason. It's
yeah,
actually happening for me, not against me. And when you look at things through that lens, that everything happens for me and not against me, then it's like, oh, I'm not a victim to my reality anymore.
yeah,
I get to do this. I like, also, you're not tied to this job. You can change your job to a different one. It's like you always have different options.
yeah. I was gonna say, one of the things that I discovered while working with my other coach, and now I feel like it's going to leave my head again. So I'm going to try to pull it back in. No, I think it's gone. We're talking about, no, we'll move on, Ruta. So that happens to me way too often where you're talking, I'm like, oh, that sounds great. And then it fizzles. But that's okay. We'll come back to it. Talking about coaching. So Redefining Success, that's your brand. That's the name of your business podcast. Just have a
Business and not
podcast.
business. It is a podcast, but really it started as a brand.
Yeah.
And under the Redefining Success brand, I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast which is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. But really it started as a brand with the intention to help people redefine what success means, because as we spoke earlier, so often people fall into the trap of believing that they just need to drive a fancy car and build a big house for the family, and that's where it ends. But really what a lot of people face at some point in life is realizing that, you know what, it wasn't really about the money, it wasn't really about the size of the house, it wasn't really about the fanciness of the car, it was all about how I feel. Do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel like I have a purpose? Do I have a peace of mind? Do I experience joy on a daily basis? And those are the things that are truly important. And for me, doesn't mean that material things are not important, because they are. My mission on this planet is to help people feel happy and build a life that pays to be themselves.
Yeah.
So building a business that is a passion business, instead of just like, oh, I have to do this thing to make money. I want you to live a happy life. That's the idea behind.
Well, my question next is going to be, do you have your own version of success? What's your definition of success, if you have one?
I would say, well, since the very beginning when I started doing this work, for me, being free was always the number one priority, number one value. And what I mean with freedom is not just financial freedom, but really free to be yourself,
Mm,
free to express your emotions, free to talk your truth, um, free to live wherever you want, free to be surrounded by people that you want to surround yourself with. So it's like that is my success,
yeah.
to live a life on your terms, not to live a life to please your parents, not to live a life to be liked by others, not to live a life that will make you feel like you can fit in with your high school friends.
Right.
No, it's for you to feel free within yourself. It's like, oh, I can be myself. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to fake anything. I can just be me.
Yeah.
That's success to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel for me, and actually, what I wanted to say earlier came back to me while you were talking. So for me, like when I was talking to a previous coach about NGBN, like I was saying, we discussed we discussed it, and I felt like while I was with NGBN, I was kind of following what they were doing. I wasn't doing my own thing. I was always waiting, what's the next thing that's going to happen? What's the next thing that's going to happen? Oh, cool. We're launching, I don't know, we're launching a new segment. We're launching a new, I don't know, a sponsorship, whatever. And I wasn't in control. And so when working with my coach, I realized what I need to do now is write my own script. I need to take the reign of my own life and guide my own life. Um, so there was that. And for me right now, my definition of success is just to find stability. And I'm sure it'll change. You know, another thing that my coach and I talked about was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And right now, like I'm at the bottom. I still have needs to be met. So for me, my definition of success is stability. Can I provide for my kids? Like, do we have a roof over our heads? Do we have food on the table? Simple stuff. Um, I'm sure my definition of success will evolve over time as my life changes, right? And I'm sure that when you've worked with people, so many people have different definitions of what success means to them, and I don't think there's any right answer, right?
No, there is no right. There's no right and there's no wrong. And yet, when I hear you share your definition of success, I I would argue that for you it is providing for your kids while maximizing your potential and your capacity to feel joy, peace, and love. So it's not just like just the needs, because you
Ah,
see And I
I
say that
neglect the other half. I focus on the providing stuff. I neglect the other stuff.
well, the thing is that I know what you're saying, but also we know each other for a few years, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be where you are today if joy, peace, alignment, love wouldn't matter to you.
Oh, they're important for sure.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's what I mean, that even though yes, those needs are very important, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's not it's not above those needs. It's just that you're providing for your family while being as happy as you possibly can be, while being as good of a father as you can possibly be. I mean, even the fact that you lost weight, like, look at you.
You can't get over that, eh?
I can't get over that.
Yeah, it's probably 20 pounds. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things. I struggled with fitness and health before. It's not something that I prioritized on. But again, working with coaches and mentors, and one of the first things that you actually sent me when you and I started working together, and I don't remember the exact wordage, but it was, you become the people you surround yourself with. So surround yourself with successful people and you'll become successful. Well, I've been doing that. And I mean, it's not like an overnight thing. I'm not going to go from zero to hero overnight, but I'm seeing the progression. I'm seeing, the growth. So 100%, I agree with you there. So back to kind of like your coaching, you talk about redefining success. Do you have kind of some core principles that you bestow or teach your clients, or how do you go about that?
Usually it's quite intuitive. So it's a
Yeah.
journey like you and I experienced, right? And most of the time it's a very deep journey for people to actually be honest with themselves as I guide them. Of course, I ask questions, but also I share my own understanding about what reality is and how we create our own reality. So I do provide some teachings like I did with you.
Yeah.
Um, but really, the main thing is having deep conversations. And the experience that my clients usually have and what they say after they have completed is like, oh my god, this was the most safe space and I was listened like never before in my entire life, and I have opened up to you like never in my entire life, not even to my spouse, not even to my best friend, to no one. So I keep on hearing the same thing over and over again from a lot of my clients who are like, you're the only person who knows this stuff, okay?
Yeah.
And so it's a really deep, beautiful journey when people in a sense come back to themselves and start owning who they truly are and what they really want in life, and walk towards their visions, something that oftentimes, just like you, didn't really know what you wanted, right? That there was a time when you were like, well, I guess I will just provide for the family and have a house and have a car and that's it. And then you were like, huh, wait a second, maybe I want more. So that's what we do with clients, that intuitively having those deep conversations, we create the safe space to create a beautiful new reality to walk towards.
Yeah. I mean, I grinned when you mentioned that people have opened up to you and said things that they'd never told anybody else, because I've done the same with you. I can remember actually quoting Psycho-Cybernetic before opening up to you, and I was like, "You remember this passage in excuse me, in Psycho-Cybernetic about the roulette gambler?" And you're like, "Well, remind me." And I was like, "Well, there's this gambler, and he's always feeling stressed out before he places the bet, and he's realizing that." After he places the bet, he was still stressed out while he was watching the ball spinning. And he was like, the time to be stressed is before you place your bet, because then you can still change your opinion. You can still change your choice. You can take your bet back. Once that ball is spinning, it's too late to be stressed. It's already in motion. So just relax and enjoy the ride and see what comes out. And then I was like, okay, with that in mind, Ruta, I'm going to tell you this. And then I told you like one of the things I struggled with probably the most, and you were able to connect me with some other people, and then I opened up to other people about it, and then it kind of became, I don't know, like easing of a burden that I was carrying. Like I was finally able to share this thing about me with somebody else, to be vulnerable, and then realize that, hey, other people are actually kind of struggling with the same thing. And it's, you start to learn about yourself, understand why you do the things that you do. And once you understand why you do the things that you do, and you actually acknowledge that you do them in the first place, you can start to change and, make corrections. So
I
yeah.
love that you mentioned that, because vulnerability is the one thing that connects people on a way deeper level like nothing else. So when you open your heart, even though it's scary, even though you might feel ashamed or guilty or regretful or whatever it is, when you open your heart to someone else, it creates this bond.
Mm,
Because when the receiver receives whatever it is that you are opening up about, they then also open up. And then you build this sense of belonging suddenly.
yeah.
And that is one thing that I think a lot of people overlook. And it's like, oh, I have to look tough. I have to appear strong. I have to keep my secrets intact somewhere hidden deep within. But then, just like you just said, it's so liberating to suddenly just take this burden away and like, oh gosh, I don't have to carry it all around me anymore.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, opening up about it has helped me, right? Because I'm doing better now. But I'm not at the point where I'm comfortable talking about it on the podcast yet. But I'm getting a lot closer. And there's a guest coming on, and I'm actually at a point where he's comfortable talking about it, and I'm trying to decide if I'm there yet. But
Mhm.
the work is happening, and that all started with just making that first step and just, all right,
Right.
Ruta, I'm going to tell you something. I hope you don't judge me. You know what I mean? And
I
now
can
I feel
tell
like I
you
can help
actually,
people.
I can tell you actually, there's someone in the coaching industry who literally built her entire business on shame slaying. And her whole story was that she had an STD and she was so ashamed of it. And it was literally eating her alive. And then one day she decided to start a podcast
Yeah.
specifically on that topic, to open up to the entire world like,
Wow.
hey guys, I have an STD and this is what think about it, this is how I deal with it, this is what you can learn from it. And now she built a multi-million dollar business
Yeah.
as a result of this, and it's just in the last 5 years or something like that.
Yeah. See, I feel like when I was younger, I was a lot more open and vocal, but then with bullying and people kind of telling me, oh, that's stupid and shut up and all these, I learned to bottle everything up. And that's kind of how I was for most of my adult life. But bottling things up doesn't help. It just kind of makes things worse. So yeah, being able to talk to you, open up to you is kind of, I don't know,
I
it's
think
alleviated a lot of stress. And yeah.
I think the key is also not to fall into the trap of therapy, because I think a lot of people also have some kind of resistance to keep opening up, because in therapy a lot of the times people don't really get out on the other side, and they keep on talking about past experiences and trauma and all this shame and regret, and they turn in circles constantly, and it's like a never ending story a lot of the time,
Yeah.
unless it's a really good therapist or coach or guide who actually will help you to get out of that loop. Because that's what happens a lot, that you keep on living in that loop and you keep on talking about the same things and you keep on feeling the same emotions, but nothing is really changing. So the key is really to open that up, to clean it up, to liberate yourself, and then move on. And of course there's a process behind that, but it's a really tricky one. A lot of the times people fall into this trap.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been guilty of that myself. Um, I wanted to ask you, so with your coaching, and you've traveled in a lot of different countries, you've lived in 7 different countries. So have different cultures impacted or affected how you coach people? Like, have you learned things from, other cultures, different religions, different, I don't know, that have impacted you?
That's a good question. I never thought about it this way. Um,
Because like for me, like I'm not Buddhist. I don't live, in Buddhist countries, but I do like the principles of Buddhism. So maybe like I try to live my way somewhat according to that, but not
yeah.
really, but kind of.
Huh. I would say I don't coach anyone differently, but the way I live and my style, let's say, of my mentorship and coaching is quite universal.
That's what I meant. Like, have they impacted your style? I guess the various countries and cultures have they
Yeah,
impacted how you coach?
I think it certainly did because it opened my mind to a lot of different perspectives. But when I say it's really universal, what I mean with that is that I would never preach any specific gods or any specific religions or anything, or not just that I wouldn't preach it, I also wouldn't judge it. So
Yeah,
I have some clients who are Buddhists and some clients who are Christians and some clients who are whoever. Like, I don't mind. At the end of the day, the overall universal principles are actually very much the same.
yeah,
And so the way reality works, I like combining different, let's put it this way, I like combining different schools of thought, which
yeah,
is some of it is universal laws, some of it would be coming from religious teachings or spiritual teachings, some of it would come from quantum physics, for
yeah,
example, which is also a really big part of manifestation. So that's, I would say, how it probably influenced me, that different people think differently because some people are far more rational. And
mhm,
I have clients who are like CEO level people, executives, and one of my former clients, he's in finance, like CEO, executive person in finance and balance sheet and risk management, and like super rational person. And I managed to coach him because I am able to connect with him on a language level. Like, I know how to coach them in a different way. So in that sense, I'm in a sense like a chameleon. I can adjust accordingly with what I believe people will take easier. They will
yeah,
not have as much like, oh, what are you talking about here?
yeah, yeah. Maybe religion wasn't the right word for me to choose. Maybe just values, traditions, things like that. But
Yeah.
so, do you have anything big coming down the pipe? Like any big projects coming up, or
Yes and no. 2025 started with really defining who I work with, who I love working with the most.
yeah,
So, what I realized is that I love working with four types of people.
hmm,
One of them, which is my infusion offer, that's where I love people to manifest their desires while connecting with their spirit, with their soul, with their inner guidance. And basically, everything changes in life no matter what. Like, we just dive full in, it's all encompassing. Then there's unconventional, which is for high level executives. And for whatever reason, maybe because I normally since 2020 create content on LinkedIn primarily, people like that reached out to me and we work on redefining success, and that it's not all about money and status and stuff like that. So unconventional is the other one. The other one is passion business accelerator, for people who want to start and build a passion business, which is something very exciting for me. And the fourth one is the most surprising even to myself, and that I call better man.
yeah,
And what I realized is that a lot of men in my life, whether they are clients or friends or whoever, whenever they enter my life, somehow, just because of who I am and my personality and the energy that I bring into the interactions, they just change. Like, they step up their game. And so these are the four things, like four pillars on which I built the Redefining Success. And as a result of this clarity, 2025 is going to have a lot of master classes and programs and stuff like that that are going to come. And I'm just really excited to be the person who is continuing to guide people.
Yeah, well, I think you're the right person for that. Um, just in closing, I have kind of two quick questions for you, as like to get some advice for the listeners. Maybe there's something else you'd like to add. But my first question, and this one I wrote it, so it's going to be very specific. So, for individuals that are feeling stuck in their current careers or life situation, what initial step would you recommend that they take in redefining their own success? So, if you're feeling stuck, what's the first thing they should do?
Great question. Start taking action.
Take action. Yeah, don't wait for things to be perfect and just take that first step.
Exactly, because a lot of people, whenever you feel stuck, that means that you're not taking action. That means that you're stagnating. And that means that you're holding yourself back for whatever reason. And whatever the next step is, just start, just do something. Whether that's signing up to an event, whether that's reaching out to work with a coach, whether that's, I don't know, going for a solo trip somewhere, like whatever it is, just
Yeah,
start. Just
yeah.
start. Just one baby step, and you will already not be stuck.
And there's I don't know who said it originally, but I heard Jordan B. Peterson say this. But he says that, to be a master, you first have to be willing to be the fool. So put yourself out there. It might not be perfect. It might, I don't know, it might look weird, foolish, but that's how you learn. It's through failure, right? That's another thing that Brian Tracy says for people that are looking for inspirational and motivational people. Brian Tracy, he says, if you want to increase your rate of success, you have to double your rate of failure, because the more you fail, the more you learn. So I love that. It makes me feel a lot better about all my failures anyways.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah,
like Edison, how did he invent the light bulb? He found 3,000 ways how it doesn't work.
yeah.
And then
Canadians,
invent.
Canadians will argue that it was a Canadian inventor who invented the light bulb and that Edison stole it. So that's
Sorry.
that's a touchy subject in Canada, but yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
My last question is, how can someone cultivate the courage to make bold decisions that align with their true desires? So, like example for me, like I said, I'm stuck in a job that I don't enjoy. I want to pursue something else. Do you have any advice for somebody who's not confident in taking that first step?
Mm. I think the best is to start looking for people who have taken that leap
Mm-hmm.
and kind of study what they say about it. And that could be some coaches, some inspirational or motivational speakers. It could be that you, I don't know, write in some Facebook group and ask if there is anyone who has done something like this. Just doing some research in that regard, and just helping yourself to familiarize yourself with this transition. Like, okay, I feel afraid, but then I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who has done it, and there are plenty of people who have done it. And wow, that already makes you feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. There are others, and I can actually ask for support, and there are people cheering me on, and it, like, that gives you some kind of a, like, okay, even though it's scary, I have a support system.
Yeah. And seeing that, oh, they stumbled, they didn't always have the answers themselves, and that's how they had to navigate. It kind of,
Absolutely.
for me personally, it makes me feel a lot more reassured that I'm not just fumbling and struggling. Like, this is normal. It's just part of the process. It's nothing to be scared of or ashamed of. It's just how it is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And really, at some point, I can tell you that fear just becomes like, okay, well, so what? There is fear. I do it anyway.
Yeah. I don't any last words of advice for the listeners?
I think the main thing is that when you train your brain to think positively, to be grateful for what you do have,
Yeah.
and to keep on looking for the things that are going well instead of looking for things that are not going well, not only that you will start creating more of that, but also your quality of life is going to change drastically.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that a lot of people kind of misuse, and there's a lot of misinterpretation about like, oh, so what, I have to be just like positive thinker and, you know, toxic positivity and all that stuff. Like, there's no such thing as positive toxic positivity,
Yeah.
because if it actually makes you feel better about your life, about yourself, then how is that ever toxic?
Mm.
It's never toxic. It's actually very helpful to start really training your brain. And again, like, all the other stuff that happens is a byproduct of that. But just the fact that you feel better about yourself and about your life, that is just so worth it to do this work.
Yeah. And also, I want to add just the ripple effect that you can have on others if you're positive and you bring that positive mindset, that rubs off on people. Same with negative, though. You're negative. Like, I've hung around people that are negative, and then I find myself going down that negative mindset
Yeah.
as well. So, yeah. Well, Ruta, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate talking to you. Where can
Thank you.
people find you online if they
The
want to,
best place is my website, redefiningsuccess.co.uk. You will find all of the information there, all the links to my Instagram, to LinkedIn, to all of the free resources, the YouTube channel. So yeah, redefiningsuccess.co.uk.
That's the main place. But you're also on Instagram, you're on YouTube, you're on LinkedIn, you're everywhere,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Instagram is ruta.infusion. But again, you will find all of those links on my website.
Perfect. And I'll post them all in the show description as well. So thanks
Awesome.
again, Ruta. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you so much. It was really fun.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Boom.